So this is a glass of water at room temperature, 8 ounces. It's got about a septillion molecules, which is a 1 followed by lots and lots of zeros. And it's full of molecules that are moving around in random directions because that's what a liquid is. How fast do you think these little molecules are moving in this, placid water? I would say like less than a mile an hour or something. They're moving at twice the speed of sound. But they're bumping into each other. They're not coordinated, so it just sits there. And if you could reach in and twist each one of them to point in the same direction, not add more energy, just have them all moving in the same direction, the glass would fly at twice the speed of sound, which is pretty cool. The water coming out of this jet is moving at twice the speed of sound, and it can literally cut through metal. And to me, what's neat about this is like your teams. Because sometimes it feels like we're all moving very fast, doing a lot of work, and not like getting anywhere, or not getting as fast as we should. And I think this is one of the reasons, because we're not coordinated enough. And you might say, well, that's not like us. We know what we're doing. We have a persona it's in a document in Confluence, so of course we're coordinated. But what I would argue is, for example, in tech support, most of the tickets that come in are from small customers, because most of your customers are small. So all the signals coming out of there are for small customers. That's fine. But then probably you have like a largest customer. And if they really want something, and you don't want to lose that 40K in MRR because that's a lot of the MRR, and so you'll probably do like random things that they want, and that is not coordinated. That is not moving in the same direction. And then the designers point out that there's 5 different sub-personas, and they each need stuff. And so actually, it's not true that everyone's coordinated necessarily. So I think the hard problem is, how do you coordinate people to do the same thing, since everyone's making decisions every day? And of course, you don't want to do that with meetings or penalties. Like, somehow we have to write something down, but what exactly? That's a hard problem, and we're going to solve that today. But then there's an even harder problem, which is, which thing should we pick? Like, should we be going to enterprise or mid-market? Like, what should we be doing exactly? That's even harder. We're also going to solve that today, or at least have a process by which you can involve everyone in the company to solve both of these. So I don't have a lot of time to do that, so let's see. So the key thing that I'm going to kind of use the entire time is this notion that being coordinated means we're making choices independently, like not with meetings, that are somehow coordinated. So somehow we have to build that. And the traditional way is some strategy with vision statements and stuff. And it's true that this is sort of directional, but I don't think this means it solves any of the things I just said, right? So we need something better than that. So to begin with, I want to reverse engineer what are the choices people are making now? Like, even if they're not coordinated, okay, fine. What decisions, what choices are we making today? And start with that. And the problem with that is you can't just ask people, so what decisions are you making? Like, that's not, I don't know, right? So we need a different way to probe what this is. And so you kind of take a step back and you just ask, what are we like? Who are we? What do we do? What's characteristic of us? And from the characteristics, we'll derive the decisions that we must be making. So to figure out, like, what are we like, it has to be like you're an alien coming down, and you don't get to interview people, because if you interview people, they'll get defensive and they have reasons for stuff, and we don't care about that. We just want to know what is happening. So like an alien just looking and just whatever you see, not even value judgment, not like this is good or this is bad, all these bugs are bad, not even that. Just what is going on, like an alien, that's what we're going to do. But once again, you can't tell the whole team, like, okay, what are we like? Write it down. Like, again, too vague. So here's some specific prompts you can use to get people to come up with good concepts of what you're really like. So like, when the competitor is in their sales pitch, what do they still admit? Yeah, those guys are pretty good at support. Yeah, the product is fast. But, like, what do even they admit? Because whatever that is, that's what you really are like. Or vice versa. Oh man, when this comes up, we always lose the sale. Whatever that is also what you're like. We're missing, but still. Or when someone says, oh man, someone's on Twitter again saying, and you're like, I know what they're saying. Whatever that is what you're like. And the same thing when people like say good things about you, often not your brand promise. You're like, here's what we're known for. And then they go on Twitter and say something else good even. Well, whatever that is what you are like, actually, at least according to the customer, which is the only thing that matters, actually. Another one I really like is this notion of pride. Being proud of something sounds subjective, but it's really not. Like, when you make a decision or do something in the moment, you know if you're like not proud of it or proud of it. It's actually quite obvious. So what was that moment where we did something where we lost money or lost brands or lost a customer or got rid of an employee perhaps, but I'm really proud that we did it because whatever that is actually a great thing to do. Or things that we say we're good at, whether we're good at it or not. Even our technical infrastructure or our design naturally makes some things easier. Because we designed this, we made these choices, so these things are easy. So that's more like us. These other things are harder to do, so that's not like us. Or things that no matter what, again, even if you lose a customer or something, you'll do. Maybe these are your corporate values, for example, if you have any. You do, by the way, whether they're written or not, so this might be a good time to find out what they are. So these are the kinds of prompts where people can actually think of some stuff. Okay, so you think of this stuff, and now it's time to, again, to step back and say, all right, we have to figure out what decisions did we implicitly make that resulted in this, even if it's conflicting. And of course, we didn't consciously make the decision most of the time. That's okay. Let's figure out what it kind of is anyhow. So what you do is start by extracting attributes or facts that come out of here. So let's say you have this kind of a positioning statement, which is common for small companies because it's small, so you don't have that many features. No kidding, as opposed to what, right? So, okay, but it does them well. Yeah, I'm sure it does. Anyway, so, okay, it's low price, few features. Notice it's no value judgment. Is few good or bad? Yeah, it depends, right? So no value judgment, it's just what's going on. And then you pair those with the opposites of them, with the idea that it's like we must have decided to have this, we could have decided this. We're starting to form decisions. Except not really, because these aren't rational decisions. Like, no one says, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna be way too expensive and just gouge customers until they figure it out. That's our plan. Like, that's not really what people do. So what we have to do is we have to refine these into an actual decision someone would make because both choices are rational. In fact, real companies have made either choice. Then it's actually a difficult choice that means something. That's what we've got to get to. So to do that, you have to act like a lawyer making a great case for both sides. So in the case of price, for example, it's not overpriced, maybe it's premium, pay more, get more. That's a rational reason why something would be expensive. And then this is very important, you also have to have the details of the consequences of having made that decision. So, and they're good and bad. And again, not really doing a value judgment, but good news, if it's cheap, then most number of people will buy it. Good, that's obviously good. Constraint. It has to be inexpensive to deliver the software if we're not charging much for it. Whether good or bad, it's a fact. And then, maybe even a bad thing. Maybe it'll be perceived as being low quality because it's cheap. So all these consequences are important because when you make this choice, you are implicitly also making this choice, and also choosing not to fall off the stage right here. And so, right? And so you have to accept all of them. This is where we get tripped up. It's like, oh, we're going to say we're high quality. Really? That may be a conflicting thing. So now we're starting to see that, right? So you do this with all this stuff. Again, it's not that you have shit support. It's that it's white glove versus self-service, which is nice. Ooh, the product is designed so well, I can just do it myself. That's good, as opposed to white glove service. And you see, we're making a good case. Which of these things? Okay. So now we have choices, but surely they're not all aligned. They're not all coordinated. But now we have all this stuff we can look at to try to see where the conflicts are. So for example, let's say, well, we got this white glove. We can kind of zoom in on this. And you go, all right, so we have this expensive, really great support. And also, the product's supposed to be inexpensive for us to deliver. That seems like it's at odds. And also, since we don't have that many features, it doesn't need that much tech support. So maybe this is in conflict. Maybe this doesn't make sense. Maybe this is doing that, right? And on the other hand, self-service products are easy to support because they don't generate that many tickets, at least in theory, right? So it kind of almost suggests like a different choice that could be more coordinated and therefore a better strategy, better set of choices. So there's a couple of things you can do to resolve these conflicts, which is obviously the thing to do next. One way, so there's like two obvious ways, but then there's usually the more creative way. So here's how it goes. The obvious thing is we could pick these things because they seem consistent, and that we might call that strategy something like low-cost leader. It's inexpensive to, as a price for the customer, it's inexpensive for us to deliver, perfectly rational strategy. So that could be one choice. But we could also say, no, screw it. We pride ourselves on this. This makes us unique or whatever reasons. So you know what? We do want that. We're just going to have to charge for it so that we're acting premium, our brand is premium, our support is premium. Again, so that's a strategy that makes sense. We could make that choice. So the obvious stuff is often just pick something that's on the page already and consistent. But sometimes the best ideas require more creativity, and I'll show you how that can work. So let's just suppose we said, I want all three of those anyway, even though they're in apparent contradiction. Are there more constraints, more decisions I could make that could make that make sense? So we could look more closely and say, well, okay, our support people are going to be expensive per person because they need to be good, but it needs to be inexpensive. But if we don't have that much tech support, then we could have fewer people that we pay a lot in tech support, and maybe that would be inexpensive. So maybe because of that, it could work. So what other constraints would go with that to make that true? You would say, well, we better not have a lot of tickets. That's got to be like a firm decision. Can't have a lot of tickets, otherwise this isn't going to work out. So that has these consequences, which are hard. Like, instead of making more features, you first prioritize fewer tickets. Not everyone wants to do that. That is not an obvious choice to make. But if you did, then all this starts to become consistent again. Maybe product has to be high quality because if there's bugs, then people call and that's no good. So once again, prioritizing bugs over features. But at least that would be consistent with having minimum features that do well. So it's starting to make sense if we're really explicit about these other constraints. Maybe another one is the product's well designed, because if it's intuitive, then people don't have to ask support. Okay. So this is a new way, you might call it elegant simplicity or some kind of title like that of what this kind of strategy could be. So again, the point is that it's aligned one way or another, but maybe being creative is a way to get at it. So eliminating the bullet points just for clarity on the slide, because in real life, the bullets are where people are aligned. In other words, it's in all those little things that people can make consistent decisions without meetings. So in real life, you don't eliminate the bullets, but okay, now it's cleaner. And so now I've got something already starting to look like a strategy, which is we're doing this now, so we're going to lean into things that are working, and then we're also going to make these changes, because then we'll have this consistent strategy that we can describe that everyone can act accordingly. So now it's starting to feel like something good and specific, not a vision statement, something very specific that people can do. Okay. Now the next thing is to notice that not all these choices are easy or even possible. Like, you can't just decide, oh, I'll just have lots of features all of a sudden. What? No, like you'd have to hire a bunch of people, and it might take a lot of time. You might have to acquire a company to go faster. Like, that's not just something you decide real quick. So this is important. What's natural and what's easy versus what's not. So maybe, for example, maybe this is a superpower we have. We're amazing at this. We're known for it. It's like this great thing. None of our competitors have it, blah, 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 blah. It's a superpower. Well, you'd want to know that, and in fact, even highlight that as what I call a strategic anchor. Here's a thing that's so good, so powerful, so strong. This has to be part of our strategy. We have to leverage this to win, duh. Like, we should never ever pick the other thing, because this is like one of the few things we have that's good. And so similarly, maybe that's hard, and that would be hard. And maybe this is hard too, because deciding to have great design is sort of the same thing. Like, if we don't have a culture of good design, you don't just snap your fingers and now design will be good. Do you even have people on staff that are good at design? Is the culture of the company one that would welcome doing a lot of design work? And, you know, like, this is hard. So actually, this is maybe not a good idea. Maybe it is. Like, again, strategy is not so straightforward. It's just like, here's the rules. We'll just pick this. You're going to have to synthesize conflicting things. That's how strategy goes. But now we can see, at least, okay, this is unconflicting, but this is hard. Okay, so it's a challenge. So we'll keep seeing how that works. All right. Now, we've been talking about ourselves, our crap, our attributes, what's good, what we're strong and hard about us, and all this kind of stuff. But the outside world, of course, matters. There's the competitors in the industry. There's all kinds of stuff. Somehow we have to bring that in. That has to be part of what we're putting together in this strategy, right? So let me start with the general trends of the industry that you're in and general secular trends. So this is stuff like, oh, we're going to a virtual workforce. No shit, but like, does your product work well in that environment or not? That's a good question. Budgets are tight now. Of course, AI, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about AI at all. The consumerization of the enterprise, which means people buy it themselves or like it first themselves, maybe even PLG, maybe, and then it gets bought top down. That's a new motion. So these are the kinds of things, like somehow this has to get in there. And so the way it gets in there is you rewrite these things. I mean, first you think of these things, and you can look online for like questions to analyze your industry. That's easy. Anyway, so you take your observations and you write it in the same fashion that we just did, with the title and the bullets, and some is good, some is bad, blah, blah, blah. And so back to your thing, there might be some new rows. Like, we didn't talk about AI yet, but AI is a thing. You have to make some decision, like don't do anything, wait and see, or go hurry up and do something bad, but just to do something. That's a decision, you know? So maybe we're just going to decide to wait. But it's still a decision that you want to record that this is a decision we're making. Besides, that's hard, so, you know. Now, the other thing you do is some of these secular trends are going to be like headwinds or tailwinds for some of these decisions. Will help or hurt some of these decisions. So what I like to do is put them in a column like this. So like, the fact that budgets are tight now, that's just generally true. So that's obviously going to benefit products that are more affordable. Even if this product does more, it's still hard because of the budget, right? So, okay, that's good. That means this decision we've already made is in line with what the industry is doing. That's good. That's going to make this more likely to work, so it's a good strategy. Maybe here, I'm just making this up, right? But maybe the people in your industry would appreciate good design. Maybe that's true. And so if that's the case, then though this is difficult, it might pay off if, in fact, this is going to a trend like the consumerization of the enterprise. So if you're saying, we got to be PLG, we got to be user first, okay, well then this is consistent with that. So even though it's hard, even though it's in the red, maybe that is, in fact, the right choice because this is going with a trend. And a lot of these won't have a trend at all. You don't have to fill it. This is not a form where you have to fill out every box. Some of them just don't apply. But wherever these trends are that apply, okay, then you want to look at that. So, okay, so maybe also people in the industry are looking for AI. Are they really? I don't know. So let's say they are. And so maybe this wait and see, it's convenient, but it's not clear whether that's actually a great idea. Maybe you should be doing it. So, okay, we'll make that red still of like, it's against the grain. I don't know. Maybe it's still okay. We only have so much time in our life, and we're already working on that, so maybe not. Right? That's the kind of thought process that I go through when I'm trying to evaluate this system of equations that has no one answer, right? So now let's talk about the competition, another thing that's outside of us that we have to bring in. And so what do you do with them? And what you do is you do exactly what you did to yourself. You're the alien, and you're looking in from the outside, and you're trying to figure out what their strategy is and what decisions they're making. Same thing. You have a little less information, obviously, because you're on the outside, but you have a lot of information. So you have things like, what's on their homepage, and how's that changed? Who is the homepage talking to, do you think? If you go to the About Us page and they say, here's what we care about, what are those things? What does that mean? What features did they add to the product in the last year? What jobs to be done are those features for? What kind of personas are those features for, et cetera? What kind of companies are those for? So, I mean, what things does their CEO or founder have like this deep belief that they have to do this or have to do that, or open source is important or something like that? Because they're not going to change that. That's a useful thing. Like, don't ignore the personal and emotional side of things or the mission side of things. Those don't change. So those are good things to observe. So you take those things and you add it to, like the Borg, you add their distinctiveness to the collective, right? So there might be new things, like maybe you weren't even thinking about open source, but and in fact, you're not. You're going to be closed source, and that's fine, but it's a decision. Someone else made another decision, okay? And once again, just like this, we can ask, well, and what decisions did other people make relative to us? So here, you could get really complicated if you want to. I like to just count how many competitors do this or that. Because usually there's no such thing as like, only we did this and no one else did that. If you're in a crowded market, that's not true. It's probably more complicated than that. So perhaps, for example, maybe there's 5 competitors that matter to you. So 4 of them are affordable and only 1 is this. So in a way, that's bad. Like, the more people that do it, the less distinctive you are in doing it too. The more you're not differentiated. But okay, you know what? It's hard to change price. It's with the trend, so okay, so what? So we won't be differentiated on price. That's okay. Not everything has to be differentiated. Maybe it's split, so that's also not a place for differentiation. But oh, good, and of course I made this on purpose, but let's suppose, remember another good strategy for being affordable is to have self-service. So suppose that's what most people did. They picked that very rational strategy. But you have this weird strategy of being affordable and yet having great service. Woo-hoo-hoo. And so since there's only one person who's trying that in this made-up example, that makes the white glove service even smarter because it's also different. So anyone that cares a lot about that, that's going to be much more likely for you to have a sale. And it just further emphasizes how this must be a strategic anchor for you, I guess. Because, man, not only are you good at it, but it makes you relatively unique. Awesome, never change that. So the more weight there is, in a sense, from these things, the more you know, oh, that's what we got to do, or that's what we must not do. And that helps you ultimately resolve what is our correct strategy, actually. Maybe, again, in design, maybe we get lucky. Maybe most of the stuff is shit like us. We're bad at it, so are you, all right. So maybe this would be another way to be distinctive. And once again, wow, if it's distinctive and it completes a coherent strategy and the market will reward us, that's a pivot worth taking. And that's what it is a pivot. Because if it's really hard and different, it's a pivot. Maybe not pivoting the entire company, but something hard, let's say. And man, it looks like it's worth it. So that's cool. So what's neat is this is on the one hand a little messy. There's a lot of garbage on the screen. But I feel like strategy is messy. This is actually relatively organized compared to how messy strategy things can be. And because strategy has to be messy because it is tackling something complicated. Because you have all these inputs. What are we doing now? What could we be doing? What are alternatives? What are all the competitors doing? What's the industry doing? What are we good at? Like, it is, we didn't even talk about, like, what moats should we create and blah. There's more stuff you could put in. It is complicated, and that's part of why it's valuable. Because by tackling that complexity and somehow coming up with something simple, like highlighting your decisions and consequences, that is the value of it, to analyze and condense all that into something simple that everyone can act on. That's the whole point. So yeah, it's a little messy, but I think this is the inputs that makes it possible for you to be confident. And even in stuff like this, which is like, we probably should do that, but we're not, we can just say that. We probably should do that, but we're not. That's actually pretty clear. That's nice. So now it's easy to tell the story of your narrative, which is equally important, because if everyone doesn't understand it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really exist. But it's easy now. There's stuff that's working we're going to do more of. We have a couple of anchors that we're really going to lean into because this is the key for us. There's some changes that we're going to be making, and so we need to align people to that and explain it and explain why. And there might be a couple of pivots that are extra hard that we're going to invest in. To me, more than one or two of these is way too many because they're expensive, they drain your energy, it might take an org change, which is way more draining, it may take investment. It's high risk because you're not good at it, so maybe it won't work or won't work for a while or it'll completely fail. Like these are rough. So if you never do it, you're probably wrong. Like a strategy that never changes is probably wrong. But man, you can't do too many of these. It's just too much risk and energy and stuff, is my feeling. But okay, maybe this one is good. Now also, what about this stuff where we're like, it's probably wrong, but how many things can one do? What I do, and I do this with teams, we have about 50 product and engineering teams at WP Engine. What I like to do with their strategies is they have a strategic backlog, meaning just a list of stuff like this. Stuff where they're like, our strategy's probably not right or not finished, or like, I don't know if this decision's good. And they just keep a list of them, that's all. And you keep it relatively ordered, and so every quarter you pick one or two as capacity allows, because you got to put it in the sprints and stuff. You can't just add it the time. You have to schedule for it. Or maybe zero. Maybe right now you're like, we're good. Let's just work on that crap and not worry about the backlog. That's fine. But you can just decide how to work on that just like you'd work on other epics. Let's work on this puzzle for 2 sprints. I don't know, whatever, right? And so you just manage it like work in a little backlog. That's how I do it. And it's literally one bullet each. Like that's the extent in a Google Doc. That's the extent of the process. It can be very simple. In fact, maybe it should be very simple. Maybe that's the way it works. So you have a narrative now. And now you can go back to your normal strategy system if you like, because now you have the thing that people can, all the details that actually coordinates people. And why. You got it all there. So now these other things, they're useful. I know I was making fun of it, because I make fun of it when they're just by themselves. It's like, I don't know, we're going to be the leading something or other, I guess. Back to work and never think about that, because how's that helpful? But in this context, it's actually nice, because you could say, you realize that these things are simply summaries of this. That's it. Their only job is to summarize this so a person can wrap their head around. Because that could be pages and pages. That is hard to keep all in your head, fair enough. So let's summarize who we're selling to. Let's summarize some of the anchors or some of the concepts. Like we said, oh, low-cost leader is a concept that could name several of these things. Okay, that's good for people to wrap their head around that notion. And since you have all the detail that people need, it's okay to be more vague, more summary, even just inspirational, like a vision. Okay now, because we have the things we need to be practical. So now it's okay to be visionary. And so that's actually pretty good. And then to me, metrics always comes last. We didn't talk about that at all. And that's because I think people do that the wrong way. And they say, here's what we need to do. We need an R40 of 30 by the 2024 or something like that. And you may, but none of that helps you decide how to win, which is what strategy is, how to win. So you do need metrics, but I say first figure out how to win. And then you figure out what metrics help you measure that along the way. What measures progress, what's short-term, what's long-term, what's lagging, what's this. Metrics is a whole other thing. But I say forget that in deciding how to win and put them on later. And so with that, I think you can align everybody, especially because of that thing. People can be aligned, and all these things when I said like write it down, like you can engage everyone in the company. It's just brainstorming, right-storming, right? Even with competitors. I find people like going like, I want to go dig into that website. They don't have to be in marketing. It's fun to just like paw through and try to figure out stuff. It's like forensic, And so maybe not everyone wants to. That's okay. It's not, not a death march here. But a lot of people like to be engaged in this. And when a lot of people are engaged, even if it's just in research and not necessarily in every decision, then it feels like we wrote this together. It feels like a co-created object. And that makes all the difference in whether people use it and whether people even like it with its faults. Because when this is like, oh, but we have to do this, we have to do that, and people go, eh. Like if they were part of making it, then they defend it themselves. Or they're like, no, we know, that's why it's on the strategic backlog, so let's just keep going. Oh, it's just so much better when it's not handed down from on high, when everyone comes together. Even if it's just in analyzing and deriving some of the inputs, it's great. So we've used this for everything from individual product teams up to large, like the entire company's strategy and what kinds of choices that we make. And as a result, I think here's how you know you're doing this right. Here's like the post facto, how is this working? When a bug comes in, a legitimate bug or complaint, the customer says this sucks or this doesn't work, and they are absolutely right. But you say, wait, that's not what we're supposed to be like. That's not where we're supposed to be strong. That's not where we're supposed to be spending our energy, so we're not going to fix it. And when you know there's all these bugs or things that are smart ideas, because everything on the right is smart, remember, we made it smart. They're all smart, but we're not going to do it anyway because we know what we're doing. Then you know you've achieved this. And in fact, just saying that out loud, you can tell how you're going to go faster. Because you're probably working on half of those bugs at this very second. And if you don't, then you go twice as fast on the stuff you should. See? So I hope this is helpful to you. I hope that you can do this because it's pretty simple, actually. And thank you. Okay.
Okay, let's do some Q&A. All right, we got some Q&A now.
Okay, great.
Yeah, let's do this Q&A. Awesome, thank you, Jason. Okay, so our first question, describe a time for us when your practice of introspection led to some conflict within your team, and how did you manage that effectively?
Oh yeah, it constantly happens. I think the biggest one is in the size of the customer, because people you never want to say no to any customer. So you say like, well, we can't say no to the small businesses because that's most of our customers, because it just is by N, right? Yeah, but Microsoft's the customer, and like they could be so much bigger, and we have to go up market sometime, and we need to diversify. And just the fact is, all those things always exist. Like Google will be a customer just because some team at Google will buy your thing. Google has 60,000 people or 200,000, whatever they have. Someone's going to buy your crap, and so you're going to go, ooh, we got to go do Google. And so. So that, like, who should we sell to is very often a conflict.
Good. It's healthy. I love it. You're challenging things today. Who typically facilitates these feedback and discovery sessions, and how do you build that healthy culture of feedback?
So there's a common phrase, I didn't make it up, which is do one, see one, do one, show one. Okay. So the idea is you, first you get facilitated, and you're like, oh, and then you see it happening. Then you try to do it with your own team, and then you teach other people how to do it to disperse. So if your team is small enough, you don't have to do that. You just do it together and you work it out. But like we have about 1,200 people. So for us, it was more like, okay, we're going to have a couple of teams do it, and I'll do it with them. and then they're like, all right, now we're going to do it. They're going to now do it with some other teams, and then like more product managers can learn how to do it and so forth. So you can do that sort of like, if you've seen it a couple of times, you can do it sort of thing.
Yeah, I love it.
But it's okay. Like, it just, to me, honesty fixes everything. So you just go into it saying, look, we haven't done this before, so it's probably going to take like way longer than it will take the next time. But in doing this, we're going to figure it out, and that's going to help the whole rest of the company be way more efficient in figuring it out. Yep. So the pain that we take now in doing this, everyone else is going to leverage it. So let's do it, and let's like write up how to do it better for us, and just take it as like a fun thing that you get to figure this out, and then you get to help the rest of the company. You kind of turn that into a positive thing. And I would also say that learning is part of the value of doing it the first time. So sometimes management is like, this is taking too long, that's no good. But if what's happening is not only is this one team getting a better strategy, but also they're learning how to make a strategy to help others, then that learning is part of the value. And so it's okay that it takes longer if we're getting that.
Yes.
So when they turn around and help 10 other teams, then you realize it was worth it.
I love that. That's great. Okay, was that helpful? Okay, let's try. Was that helpful? Okay, thank you. Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Jason. Thank you. Excellent.